On children's health. And if you look at all the statistics for the United Kingdom, it's not just on mental health, everything from asthma to immunisation to teeth, to dental disease, to obesity, to every single different indicator that you can think of to measure a child's health, the poorer you are, the worse your outcomes will be, and most outrageously of all, disgracefully of all, because of the levels of poverty in this country, the levels of child poverty in this country, are so far, far worse than other Western European nations which would be equivalent to us. And you will have, therefore, for example, and many of you here will know, child and adolescent mental health services being cut back, being neglected, being undermined, not being funded properly. We have scandals of children being treated in adult wards and things like that. Well, this is something that I want to put an end to. And I also want to, and there is a connection between child and adolescent mental health issues and then adolescents turning to drugs or drink. There's, yes, definitely a connection, and we've got to bring an end to it.
Homelessness, and we know that there's a massive issue with addiction amongst the homeless community, and that being perhaps a big cause of homelessness as well. What role do you think some of those, attacking those root causes, whether it's welfare or housing or other policies, plays in addressing this, and what can they do about that?
I mean, you're right to raise it. Jeremy Corbyn is right to raise it. I mean, housing provision in this country is a scandal. You know, we're one of the biggest economies in the world, still, even with Brexit, and we cannot deliver decent housing for the people who live in this country. Rough sleeping is rocketing in this country. And young people unable to get access to housing because of the way those different benefits are being cut back is rocketing as well. And we've got to put an end to it. And I think we've got at some point to take a stand and, and we've got to say to people, or say to the government and make the argument that we cannot keep cutting people's social security support, we cannot keep cutting public services, you cannot keep blocking councils from building houses and not expect it to have an impact on the health of the country and the health of the nation. So Jeremy's right to raise it, and the thing about this and what you're getting at is it's all interconnected. Everything is interconnected, right? The Health Secretary runs the National Health Service, but the National Health Service is somewhere you go to when you are ill and you are sick, and in theory they fix you, right? But being health secretary should be about more than that. Because the health of the nation isn't just about that brilliant institution that is the National Health Service. The health of the nation is about giving people proper homes and decent homes to live in. It is about giving people a proper job. It's about giving people proper support in society. It's about proper education. So everything has to be linked together. And I think one of the driving kind of missions of a Jeremy Corbyn Labour government will be linking all these things together to have a real all-out assault on poverty and deprivation in this country.
To talk about, and perhaps, well, definitely it isn't spoken about enough. You're one of quite a few high-profile people who does speak openly about this. What do you think we could do to get more conversations about addiction going, get people talking about it, educate people on it more?
I tell you what, this conversation's going quite well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you're saying everything's interconnected, I think, hello, there's a way in for me here. Now we're talking about transcendent realms of consciousness. The material dimension is housed. There can be access through shamanism. Right up my alley. Shadow Health Minister says everything is one. Limitless consciousness manifesting itself.
Let's have an election.
The divine just got in through the back door. That's a nice story. I mean, it is a difficult topic, but I was thinking about that while also listening very carefully to what other people were saying while they were talking. I was thinking about this also. I was thinking that, in a way, addiction is just amplified consumerism. That's all it is. The idea that you can make yourself feel better by buying something, that you can make yourself feel better by putting something inside of yourself. And again, thanks to Professor David Harvey, I'm learning a bit more about different forms of surgery.
Wicked.
And the necessity to continually stimulate desire is a component of capitalism.
Yeah.
So, of course, addiction is a byproduct of that. And alienation also. All of these sort of tools for social change include within them conditions that I suffer from. Relentless desire, always wanting more, feeling alienated. It seems that these conditions can be socially managed. I think that the conversation about addiction needs to be extended to include the way that we consume, the way that we eat food, the devices that our children hold perennially in their hands, that are constantly trying to market things to them that they don't need by telling them that they're not good enough.
Well said.
This is a necessary...
Well said.
Write it out. I've done stand-up in this room, so still feeling himself out a bit, you know. So of course, my point simply, Shelley, I'll go out on an applause like any dignified man would, is that addiction is an amplification of consumerism, and consumerism is the creed of our time.
Slightly to thinking about the justice system. So we hear that there's a big problem of addiction in prisons, people actually going into prison, coming out with an addiction, or it's certainly not being helped at all. What can we do about the criminalisation of addicts and the prison system to help with this issue?
Oh, that's me, is it? Not the actual politician.
You are a politician.
Well, you have to go, so.
Well, I mean, it's all part of the piece, isn't it? That, you know, it's another example of how public health provision is being cut back. And in many prisons and in actually prison cells and police stations, where you know, the police are increasingly dealing. I'm sorry, I'm going off on the police, but I'll come back to the prison part. You know, the police are increasingly dealing now with people with mental health issues, which have often also got addiction issues, because the mental health services in that community have been cut back so severely that they cannot deal with those issues. So you now get more and more people being locked up overnight in police cells and police stations across the country when they shouldn't be there. You know, they should be getting proper health, specialist health support in the community, at the local community health trust or a local hospital. Well, not an A&E is the last place someone with mental health problems should be, but you know, in the proper health community trusts should be supporting those people. But more and more of them are getting locked up in police cells overnight. And by the way, something I didn't quite appreciate, and so I read about it. Much to my embarrassment, I didn't appreciate it. The provision for that limited medical support in a lot of those police cells, because the way it is commissioned by local police commissioners, which are these politicians that the Tories now have put in charge of police commissioning in lots of areas, and there's a handful of Labour ones, but they're mainly Tory ones. They're increasingly giving the contracts to look after those people in police cells overnight to private sector organisations, like your sort of, you know, your kind of Sercos and all that, and captors and all that. I mean, you know, what expertise have those people got for looking after some of these incredibly vulnerable people in police cells overnight? So look, we've got to look at this as well. So as well as the sort of NHS side of things, we've got to look at how we treat addiction, as you say, in our judicial system, both in police cells and in prisons. In a lot of areas, the contracts for dealing with addiction issues in prisons have been lost to the private sector as well, which my instinct is they will not be at all providing the level of service that is necessary. But look, you know, if we want to crack this, if we want to deal properly with addiction issues in this country, and not just treat people who have addiction as a sort of irritant, like you were saying, the way in which, because they are, you know, they are difficult, vulnerable people to deal with.
Not all of us.
We have to give them proper support, whether that's in the prison, in a police cell, or in the wider community. And that is what I'm sort of saying to you here today. I, as the Labour Health Secretary, should I ever get that tremendous opportunity, will make addiction a big priority of ours in government.
Now, this is obviously a big debate. Lots of people have very different opinions on it, around legalisation of drugs. What's your view on that? Do you think it's something that could potentially be helpful in supporting people, or are you against it?
broadly speaking, I think that the journey of stigmatisation begins with criminalisation.
Well said.
But
Well said.
what I would be in favour of, watch this is really good politics, I've learned this. You're going to love this.
He's not going to answer, is he?
No, I'm not that good, I didn't even think of that.
It's not the daily politics.
to my
I won't be
earlier
answering
point.
you.
No, this is the thing I learned, it's good this. Regulation. We need regulation.
Yeah, legal
of drugs.
regulation.
We need
That's
to
right.
regulate drugs. As long as drugs are criminalised, you can't regulate them. As they continue to be criminalised, they will de facto be stigmatised. When you're talking about some of the problems that people are experiencing in police cells or prisons, it's because a good many of those people shouldn't be there in the first place.
Yep.
They're suffering from mental health issues and put them in prison as a response to it. So, for me, the transition needs to occur at the point of diagnosis. This is a mental health issue, not a criminal issue. So, in short, like our dear Prince William, I would say that the conversation on legalisation of drugs needs to be reopened. Not because I endorse drugs, I'm more terrified of drugs than most people, but because it needs to be regulated and controlled and destigmatised.
Well said, Russell.
I realised the thing just then. I realised the thing. And it's to do with this. I suppose that the reason that we're not encouraged to think compassionately about mental health, we're not encouraged to think compassionately about these issues, is because once you start pulling the string of compassion and empathy, then we start to connect to people in a different way, and a lot of the systems that we toil under begin to come apart. So I suppose we're encouraged to regard things from an individualistic perspective, condemnatory, not thinking about... also I think that when I walk past homeless people, if I think there's a reason that you're homeless, it saves me from the terror of, oh my God, that could happen to me. I'm just waiting for something to go slightly wrong in my life, and I'll be spilled on the pavement and ignored.
Before we get some contributions and questions from the floor. Junkie, you were kind of talking about obviously being younger and growing up with your dad's addiction. I'm interested in what educational interventions can be done. I don't know if some of the charities that you've worked with as well, Russell, speaking to young people, is there a lack of awareness? I remember being in school and having somebody from the local police force coming in to do the drugs talk and just showing us some pictures and saying Class A, Class B, Class C. All went over my head, had no idea what any of it meant, and had no idea about the kind of wider social implications or what it might like to be like growing up with somebody suffering. So what role do you think there